The sin no one names correctly. What the Bible never told you about the Tower of Babel. Before the tower ever rose, God had already given humanity one simple instruction. Not, build something impressive. Not, reach for heaven. Just this. Fill the earth. Spread out. Multiply. Go. And the people of Babel looked at that command, and did the exact opposite. Almost everyone thinks this story is about pride. About humans trying to literally climb into heaven and God knocking them down for their arrogance. That's the version taught in Sunday school, and it's not quite what the text says. By the end of this video, you'll understand what the tower's builders were actually afraid of, why God's response to them echoes the exact language used at the creation of the world, and why the confusion of languages might be one of the strangest acts of mercy in the entire Bible. This is the Tower of Babel, what Genesis never told you. After the flood, God repeats to Noah and his sons almost word for word the instruction he gave Adam at the very beginning. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. It's not a suggestion. In the structure of Genesis, this command is a kind of reset button. Humanity gets to start over, and the first instruction is expansion. Spread out across the whole world God made. Generations later, Genesis says the whole earth had one language and one set of words. As people migrated eastward, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And immediately, the text gives us their reasoning in their own words, quoted directly. Come, let us build ourselves a city, and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. Read that sentence slowly, because it contains the entire hidden conflict of this story. They weren't just building a tower. They were building a city and a tower for one explicit purpose, so they would not be scattered. The very thing God had commanded them to do, spread across the earth, is the exact thing this project was engineered to prevent. This reframes everything. The tower wasn't primarily an act of reaching upward in defiance of heaven. It was an act of staying put in defiance of a command. Unity, in this specific context, wasn't a virtue. It was resistance dressed up as ambition. And the phrase, make a name for ourselves, carries weight that's easy to miss in translation. In the ancient world, your name was your legacy, your permanence, the thing that outlived you. This wasn't a random construction project, it was an attempt to build something so significant, so towering, that it would guarantee the builder's place in history on their own terms, independent of the God who had just told them what their purpose was supposed to be. As for the tower itself, the phrase, top in the heavens, doesn't necessarily mean the builders thought they could physically walk into the presence of God. Ancient temple towers, structures called ziggurats, were common throughout Mesopotamia, massive stepped platforms built specifically as meeting points between the human and divine realms, often topped with a shrine. Archaeology has uncovered several of these structures in the region Genesis describes, some rising well over 200 feet. The builders of Babel were very likely constructing exactly this kind of monument. Not a literal stairway to heaven, but a religious and political center designed to anchor an entire civilization permanently in one place, with humanity effectively summoning the divine down to them, on their terms, rather than going out to fill the world as instructed. And then comes one of the most striking verses in the whole account. God doesn't simply strike the tower down from a distance. Genesis says, the Lord came down to see the city and the tower. Come down, the same verb used to describe intimate, direct divine involvement, not remote judgment, but God stepping close enough to inspect what humanity had built with his own eyes, echoing the same language used when he personally investigated the earth's corruption before the flood. What he finds prompts a line even stranger than the builder's original boast. God says, behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. This isn't sarcasm. Many scholars read this as a genuine acknowledgement of collective human capability. Unified language and purpose make people extraordinarily powerful, for better or for worse. The concern isn't that humans are becoming too competent. It's that this particular concentration of unified power is being aimed entirely at self-glorification in defiance of a divine command, rather than the world God intended for them to inhabit. And then, just as at the creation of the world, God speaks in the plural. Come, let us go down, and there confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. The exact phrasing, let us, mirrors the divine counsel language from Genesis chapter 1, when God said, let us make man in our image. Scholars have debated this plural language for centuries. Whatever its full meaning, its deliberate echo here is almost certainly intentional. The unmaking of humanity's unified rebellion is framed with the same words as the making of humanity itself. The result isn't fire. It isn't a flood. It's confusion, literally. The Hebrew word for the city, Babel, is presented in the text as a pun on the Hebrew verb, balal, meaning to confuse. God doesn't destroy the tower. He doesn't kill the builders. He simply makes it impossible for them to keep working together, by taking away the one thing their entire plan depended on, mutual understanding. Genesis says they stopped building the city, not because it was leveled, but because they physically could not coordinate anymore. And, from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. Which means the ending of this story is almost unbearably ironic. The builders did everything they could to avoid being scattered. Their tower, their city, their shared name, all of it was engineered specifically to keep humanity together in one place. And the result of their defiance was the exact outcome they feared most, now enforced rather than chosen. Scattered across the whole earth, speaking languages they could no longer share with one another. Here's the detail almost no retelling of this story sits with long enough. Was this judgment, or was it correction? Nowhere does the text say God was enraged. There's no language of anger here, none of the grief described before the flood. It reads more like a parent stepping in to gently but firmly redirect children who are refusing to do the one thing that was actually good for them. Scattering wasn't a punishment invented on the spot. It was the plan all along. Humanity simply refused to walk into it willingly, so God ensured it happened anyway. Seen this way, the confusion of languages isn't really the tragedy of this story. The tragedy is what came before it, an entire civilization so afraid of being spread thin, so hungry to build a permanent name for itself, that it organized all of its unity and ambition around resisting the one instruction meant to help it flourish. Babel isn't a story about God being threatened by human achievement. It's a story about what happens when human achievement gets pointed entirely inward, at self-preservation and self-glory, instead of outward, toward the wider purpose it was meant for. The name Babel would go on to echo through the rest of the Bible as shorthand for confusion, empire, and human pride at its most self-defeating. But underneath the wordplay is something quieter and more human than a tale of cosmic punishment. A group of people who built a monument to staying together, and discovered, too late, that the very thing they feared most was the thing they'd been called to all along.